Why don't you go ahead and start the housekeeping?
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom.
Can we begin housekeeping, please?
English or Spanish.
Hello, hello. Wake up.
Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen.
I can hear
the comment. More time will be
Sounds like it started on Zoom, but not in here.
For questions or issues on making a public comment, please
Well,
call.
and I didn't hear that we started the recording either.
We're working on it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on making a public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Good morning. We'll call to order the Stationary Source Committee for November and ask for roll call.
Good morning. Councilmember Caccioti, absent. Senator Delgado.
Here.
Supervisor Mitchell, absent. Board Member Padilla-Campos.
Here.
Mayor Salache.
Present.
Mayor McCallum.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Go on to our first item, which is an update on proposed Rule 1159.1 presented by Dr. Chung. Dr. Chung. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair McCallum and members of the committee. My name is Kalam Chung, a Planning and Rules Manager. Next slide, please. Proposed Rule 1159.1, it regulates emissions of nitrogen oxides, NOx emissions from nitric acid tanks. Unlike other NOx rules which address emissions formed by combustion, NOx are formed very differently from this universe. They're formed by two different pathways. The first pathway is through the reaction between nitric acid and metal. The picture on the right shows an example of a typical nitric acid tank. It contains a bath of chemical solution, including nitric acid. When a piece of metal is placed inside a tank, NOx emissions are formed. In other words, NOx are formed from a chemical reaction process. The second formation pathway is through the decomposition of nitric acid under high temperature. For both of these pathways, NOx are not a result of combustion, and therefore there's no zero emission alternative. The only way to reduce emissions from this universe is through the installation of controls. Proposed Rule 1159.1 is also the last landing rule of the transition of the reclaim program, and it establishes requirements for BART, best available retrofit control technology. Thank you. Next slide. This proposal is expected to impact about 255 facilities. One thing unique about this universe is that it has a wide range of facility types as well as facility operations. There could be smaller facilities such as mom and pop shops, which use a small amount of nitric acid. There could also be larger facilities such as the reclaim facilities, which use thousands of gallons of nitric acid. This proposal is drafted in a way to accommodate this wide range of operations.
Did you go downstairs yet?
Next slide.
Go ahead.
This slide shows an overview of the BART assessment. Following the steps that are outlined in the BART arrow, staff proposed a BART emission limit for NOx, which is 0.30 pounds per hour of NOx emissions. This is a mass emission limit, and for facilities that have high emissions above 0.6 pounds per hour, it is cost effective for them to install control to meet BART. Alternatively, at the request of a facility, a 99% control efficiency is also proposed. The picture on the right shows a graphic of a wet scrubber, which is a technology used to reduce emissions from this universe. Next slide, please. Slide number 5 here shows a summary of the key requirements for this proposal. For facilities that have emissions greater than the 0.6 pounds per hour threshold, they're required to install control by submitting a permit application by January 1st of 2026 and meet the BART requirements by January 1st of 2029. Facilities that have emissions below the threshold, they have two other alternatives. They may either demonstrate that their uncontrolled emissions are below the threshold through a one-time source test, or they might demonstrate that they're low-use facilities through recording their nitric acid usage. The two alternative pathways are highlighted in blue on the slide. And for facilities that plan to demonstrate their low-use facilities, they must demonstrate that their usage are below two thresholds that are established in the rule. And one is a threshold per individual nitric acid tank, and there is also a facility-wide threshold. Next slide, please. It is expected that this proposal will result in 7 facilities installing control to meet BART, and these are the larger facilities that use high volume of nitric acid. The remaining of the universe are expected to comply with the two alternative pathways. Baseline emissions is estimated to be about 1.12 tons per day of NOx emissions, and this is an upper bound conservative estimate, assuming that all nitric acid reacts to form NOx. Cost effectiveness is about $37,000 per ton of NOx reduced, and emission reductions is about 0.11 tons per day. Next slide, please. For the social economic impacts, the average annual compliance cost is about $2.29 million, assuming a 1% real interest rate. Much of these costs are projected to be on larger facilities that are required to install and operate controlled equipment. It's also expected that about 30 jobs will be foregone each year on average. There's a minor update for the last bullet. The draft social economic impact assessment report has been released, and they're made available on November 5th. Next slide, please. In terms of the California Environmental Quality Act, construction activities associated with this proposal are not expected to cause significant adverse environmental impacts. Therefore, a notice of exemption is being prepared. Staff has worked really closely with our stakeholders, and we have not identified any key remaining issues. We're scheduling a public hearing on December 6th. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. Community members, any comments, questions before we get public? Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you can explain a little bit more about the one-time source test. What is that?
Sure. So for the facilities that have emissions below the threshold, they have two compliance pathways. One of them is to conduct a one-time source test. And the intent of the source test is to show that their emissions under maximum operating conditions are below 0.6 pounds per hour.
I guess I'm curious, just what does that test look like? Is it?
The source
Um,
test looks like for these nitric acid tanks, so it will be test under when they put a piece of metal under maximum operating conditions. It could be 5, 10, depending on what they're permitted, what their typical operations are. And with the chemical solution that you see on the picture, and they might need to have a temporary enclosure to estimate the amount of emissions that NOx emissions are formed under that chemical reaction process. Sure.
So it's sort of like at full production, there's something measuring the emissions, and then that will be noted, and then that would sort of give them the all clear, I guess you could say.
Right. Slightly.
I guess I'm just wondering if it's a device or what that looks
Yeah.
like.
I'll go ahead and jump in, former source tester here. But it's exactly that, is you look at, in the picture on the right there, you see a tank, a chemical reaction happens in that tank where NOx emissions come off of it. So you got to capture that either through an exhaust stack, and then a probe is put in that stack and you pull a sample for NOx emissions, and you can get an emission rate from that.
And this is equipment that belongs to the facility, or that AQMD goes in and does the testing?
It's typically a third party,
The-
independent
okay.
third party contractor that does that testing.
Oh, and we'll certify it.
Yes.
Got it. That's sort of the process I was trying to figure out. Thank you. And then the 7 facilities that are going to be above, are they concentrated in a single community? Are they sort of dispersed? Do you have an idea?
Sure, that's a great question. So these 7 facilities, they are larger facilities. They could be in the aerospace industry. And so from the information that we have, they could be in LA County or there could be in San Bernardino County. So they're not focused in one specific neighborhood or community.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, I'll ask for any public comment. Please raise your hand or punch *9 on your phone. Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
I can move.
I don't
Yeah.
think we need to make a motion on this
There's no
one.
motion
Chair.
required. on this item.
Oh, this is, I'm sorry, you're right. This is a receive and file, as are all of them. Thank you. Very good. Then we'll go on to an update on proposed amended regulation XXX Title V by Michael Morris. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Chair McCallan and board members. Next slide, please. So our regulation 30 basically establishes our Title V permit program as required by the Clean Air Act. And there are approximately 320 facilities that are Title V facilities. They're put in the Title V program because of their emissions that exceed specific thresholds that are established within the regulation. And I wanted to draw your attention to, in particular, 2 key provisions within Rule 3002. They're the emergency affirmative defense provision, which essentially allows facilities to avoid notices of violation if there's some type of emergency like a lightning strike or earthquake or something like that that causes emissions. And the second part of Rule 3002 is a greenhouse gas tailoring, which is essentially makes it a facility applicable to the Title V program if they have greenhouse gas emissions over a certain threshold. Next slide, please. So both of these I highlight because they were subject to recent court actions. In the U.S. Court of Appeals, it was determined that the emergency affirmative defense provision should not be included so that they can have civil penalties assessed in those types of situations. And so U.S. EPA has decided to remove that from these provisions and asked us by August 2025 to remove that from our regulation as well. And the second is that the U.S. Supreme Court decided that we may not include greenhouse gases when deciding if someone should be part of Title V. So those two things occurred. Next slide, please. And because of that, we are now removing those two provisions from Rule 3002. There are 4 other rules that reference those provisions, and so those rules will be amended as well. Next slide, please. This rule, of course, we're just removing some of these particular provisions within our Regulation 30. We don't expect there to be any emission reductions associated with that or any kind of socio or CEQA impacts. However, we did get some comments when we did the rule development process asking, what would be the situation if there was some type of emergency. And we want to point out that our process for dealing with such types of occurrences would remain the same. We do look at each case individually, look at the facts, the record keepings and things like that to decide what type of action would be appropriate. And basically at this time, we don't see any change, so we would continue business as usual. Next slide, please. And so we're bringing this to the board in January 2025, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Michael. In essence, this is administrative change to the rule to comply with the law.
Exactly.
Okay, any comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Please raise your hand or punch *9 on your phone. Seeing none, then we'll move on to our next item, which is the annual permitting update on implementation of Rule 1109.1. And Bhaskar Chandan is going to present this. Good
Thank
morning.
you, Chair McCallan. Members of the committee, I'll be doing this presentation on update to the permitting activities under Rule 1109.1. This is our 6th update to the committee. Previously, we were doing quarterly updates till the end of last year. Then we switched to annual updates, but we're still doing quarterly reports to the committee. So this is our first annual update, but actually it's the 6th update. Next slide. So as you know, Rule 1109.1 was adopted in November of 2021. It establishes bulk emission limits for 300 pieces of equipment, mostly at the refineries and related operations. And it also establishes alternate pathways for the refineries to meet the emission limits in the rule. Next slide. These are all the facilities that are affected by Rule 1109.1. There are 9 refineries, 3 small refineries, like the asphalt plant and biodiesel plant, and related operations like the hydrogen plant and the sulfuric acid plant that support the refineries. Next slide. So the rule, it's a very complex rule, 77 pages, and it has multiple options for the refineries to meet the targeted emission reductions. It allows for the refineries to pick a schedule that better aligns with their turnaround schedule. So these were the 5 options, which are called I plans. And the rule also allows, equipment bases also, there are some flexibilities allowed in the rule for the refineries to meet the overall targets that we want them to achieve in this rule. So this slide pretty much lays out all the refineries. If you look at the second column, each refinery picked an option that better aligns with their schedules and the emission reductions and the dates for submittal of the permit applications. Next slide. So the I plans, B plans, and B caps, these were one of the first applications that were submitted. We issued all these applications last year. A couple of refineries had to go back and made some adjustments to their compliance strategies. So they came in and submitted revised plans. And a couple of those we have issued. 2 of those are still in the planning stages. All of these plants, they were AB 617 steering committees were notified about this, and all the plans, once we issue them, they are on our website also. And that's the QR code, which will take you to our website page. Next slide. So this lays out the overall schedule for implementation of Rule 1109.1. As you can see, the schedule goes up to 2031. It's a pretty busy slide, but if you look at the yellow arrow, that's where we currently are. To the left of the arrow are all the deadlines that have passed. To the right of the arrow are the upcoming deadlines. And as you can see, in 2026, 2027, there are no deadlines for submittal of applications, basically because once we issue the permits for the initial phases, we want them to complete the projects. These are pretty capital intensive projects, take a long time to implement, long time to permit also. So once they are done with their initial phases, then in 2028, they come back for the final phase of their project. So 2028 through 2031 is when all the final phase permits applications will be submitted. Next slide. So this is basically the previous slide, just the first 4 years expanded to show more details of what occurred in the first 4 years. As you can see, where we currently are, most of the deadlines have passed. A couple of deadlines coming up next year, where we are expecting some more applications. Next slide. This chart basically, when the rule was implemented, we estimated the number of applications that were expected to be received and the timelines for those applications so that we can better align our work schedules and resources to meet the requirements for the permitting. The purple bar is what we estimated, number of applications that we will be receiving. The green bar is actually the number of applications that we received. They're more or less in line with what we're expecting, the number of applications that we have received. Total, we are expecting 309 applications. So far, if we have received around 167 applications. And next year, we're expecting 33 more applications to come in. And as I said, in 2026, 27, there are no deadlines, so we don't expect any applications to come during those years. Next slide. So this is how we classify all the applications that we receive, by categories in the rule, whether it be table 1, table 2, source testing requirements. So these are all the applications that we have received. In 2022, we had received 72 applications. 23, we were up to 152. Currently, we are up to 167. And by next year, we expect 33 more. So we're probably going to be at around 200. This is in line, again, with we're expecting about 2/3 of the applications to be submitted within the first 5 years of implementation. And that is in line with the reductions that we expect from this rule. We are expecting about 7.7 to 7.9 tons per day of NOx reduction. And most of those NOx, 2/3 of the NOx reduction would be occurring by 2027. So this is again in line with what the rule expectations are. Next slide. This slide gives you a status of all the applications that we have received, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Currently, we have received 167 applications that you mentioned. 98 of those have already been issued. 20 of those are in final phases, and I expect that those should be going out in the next couple of months. So as you can see, we are doing pretty good on issuing those applications. We are making sure that we are not holding up the refineries from any projects that need to be implemented. And we work closely with the refineries in implementing this rule. There are some applications that are under review and very few that are in process. Some of the applications that we have recently received are still under process. And as you can see, it takes time for us to issue these permits. Once we review it, the facilities review it, it goes to EPA. EPA has 45 days to review these applications. And if they don't have any comments, then we can go ahead and issue these permits. So that's the little flow chart at the bottom of this chart. Next slide. So we looked at the applications that we have issued and how much reductions those will achieve or have achieved. And this table provides you the reductions that will be achieved from the applications that we've already issued. And it's classified per refinery. So all the major refineries, what reductions we expect to achieve based on the application that we've already issued. Next slide. And this is the reduction based on the number of applications that we have issued per quarter. It goes up to quarter 2, 2024, and then the total, that orange bar, the total 2.87 tons per day of emission reductions we expect to achieve from the applications that we already issued. A bunch of reductions occurred under NOx shave, which is shown in the green bar. These are for the reclaim projects. Those reductions were achieved for NOx. So the total reductions that we are seeing is 5.43 tons per day. And as I said, the total reductions we expect from this rule is about 7.7 to 7.9 tons. And this gives you a good idea of where we are as far as the actual reductions are concerned that we expect to achieve from this rule. Next slide. We continue to streamline up our permit application process. We have templates for each kind of application that we receive. So the engineer, when they receive application, they don't have to start from scratch. So we are getting more efficient in processing these applications. We work, as I say, closely with the refineries also in implementing this rule. Next slide. The next step is we continue processing 1109.1 applications as expeditiously as we can. This is a small portion of the total number of applications that the refinery permitting team has. So we have to strategize and keep permitting for the other projects also. And we'll continue to do so and work with the refineries to make sure we get the permits that they need to implement these projects on time. And that pretty much concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. It appears that everything's going along well and that we're achieving what we expected on this rule. Any comments from committee members? Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you just explain the difference between in process and under review?
So in process it's with the engineer. They're still doing the evaluation, writing the reports. And once the engineer has done their evaluation, it goes to review. We have a couple of levels of review. One is senior engineer and the supervisors. So that's what is, when you say under review, it's being reviewed by. So the engineer has completed processing, then we review it. The senior engineer will review it and give comments back to the engineer. They'll make the changes and it goes back to the senior engineer. So there is some back and forth involved.
I see. And then it gets issued after that process, after.
Then
Passes
it goes to EPA.
Oh, right.
And there is that EPA review involved there before we can actually issue those permits.
Got it. So those two processes are sort of an internal AQMD process
Right.
that are going back.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so I heard that Chevron is closing, but I don't know if,
It's
or moving. Who is, oh, Philip. Oh, I could have sworn it was Chevron. Okay. So did I just start a
They may
rumor?
be, but that would be news to us.
Right. Okay. So it's Philip. So do we know what that means, or is there, I guess that kind of changes my comments because I see Phillips is sort of has issued permits already, no?
Oh, yeah. So
Okay,
maybe if
so
you can
maybe
go back to
that's-
slide number 4.
So it does not.
If you
Maybe
see
my
on
comments.
slide number 4, Phillips 66 said they have opted for option number 5. So 50% of, actually Phillips 66 was way ahead of other
Mhm.
refineries as far as compliance with 1109.1 was concerned.
I think my comments don't apply that anymore. I really thought it was the Chevron that we were talking about, but
Chevron is moving their headquarters from San Ramon.
also they're just moving headquarters.
But yeah, not in our
Oh,
district, that
okay,
was in Bay
not
Area.
their- I thought that was kind of big news. Okay, thank you. That's
Sure. Any other comments of committee members or questions? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. We have one commenter online, Harvey Etter. Go ahead, Harvey. Harvey,
Hello, am I being heard?
yes, you are.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. My name is Harvey Etter. I'm the founder director of the Public Solar Power Coalition. I'm speaking for myself and PSPC and like-minded folks. Okay. This rule 1109.1 has been around a long time, and we've commented on it. I want to incorporate by reference the February 8th Administrative Committee to the Board's meeting. It was a discussion with me and Dr. Burke and a little bit from Wayne. Anyway, also the December 6th of the same year, 2019, spoke half a dozen times, and including on there was reference to this meeting. Okay, in there we had 100 exhibits from the Solar New Deal. Also, incorporating by reference a unanimous Supreme Court decision of State of California, 2012, of South Coast District versus Coney manufacturers. And it said that it's technology forcing. That's how we got the catalytic converter, right? And it applies to solar, and that's what was discussed at these meetings. Also, on the 2nd of December, we came on Friday for the board meeting. We got run out of court trying to serve papers on these issues for the whole district.
Please,
The 16th.
please limit your comments to Rule 1109.1 and the part that's being discussed today. Thank you.
This is outrageous that we're being taught. We should have our time. Okay, now listen. We're talking about Supreme Court of the state and back. It's supposed to be evaluated. It's supposed to evaluate.
Thank you, Harvey.
Chair, staff did have one more comment on this item. Bhaskar, Mr. Chandan did mention that this is our 6th update. Staff was going to recommend, based on our progress and reduced permit application deadlines that are coming up, to just move to this annual presentation.
Sounds good to me. Any objection from committee members? Seeing none, we'll approve that. Okay, committee members, we have some written reports, 3 of them. Is there any need to pull those and discuss them or have a presentation? Seeing none, other matters, any other business we need to talk about?
Chair, staff does have one clarification on the agenda. We wish to point out on item 9 on the agenda, we identified the next meeting date as Friday, January 24th. There's been a change of plans, and there will be a December meeting for Stationary Source that will be on December 20th, 2024 at 10:30 a.m.
Very good, and technology will be at 9. Okay. This brings us to our general public comment period for items not on the agenda. I see only one hand. Harvey, you have 3 minutes on topic, please, for items that are under the purview of this committee. Go ahead, Harvey.
Okay, items that are on the purview of this committee. We brought this up about BARC and solar, the Solar New Deal, okay, in the 16 plan. All other plans are subsidiary to that and don't count because it was never evaluated. This is due process, and it was illegal both the district, CARB, and EPA. It's all illegal. And anyone who has planning degrees and authorized or law degrees from the state, you're a captured agency. And this is the way it is. And you're going to lose your licenses. Okay? This is murder, premeditated murder from emissions and climate. And you all know it. And hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people are dying. And it's all on you. And you're sold out, and enough is enough, and we're whistleblowers, and for decades we are covered by state and federal law, and you are retaliating against us by not letting us speak. And Dr. Burke said on February 8th and 19th at the Administrative Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Eder, for your comments. We can move on. That's not within the jurisdiction of this agency. Thank you, this committee.
Next, we have Fernando Gaitan.
Yeah, good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Fernando Gaitan with Earth Justice, here to just really support staff in their development of rules 1111 and 1121. I know they're not on the agenda for today's meeting, but I just want to recognize that, staff have spent a substantial amount of time really engaging with a diverse group of interested parties. They've organized no fewer than 6 working groups and a public workshop where we and many of our partners actively participated and raised several issues with time for staff to really address some of those concerns and incorporate them in the rule that you see before you. And simply put, this rule is ready and long overdue for full board consideration and adoption. I understand that there was some time that was built in to reassess some other issues, but really this rule with an estimated 10 tons of NOx per day that it's slated to reduce, the Air District really cannot afford to leave any emissions reductions potentials on the table, as we have never met an ozone standard. This is the most emission reduction from a single rule package in over 3 decades, and this rule is necessary to get the region closer to attainment and to fulfill the district's stated commitment to establish a zero NOx standard wherever feasible. I strongly urge you to stay the course. It's time to get this rule adopted and implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. That concludes public comments and this meeting. We'll adjourn. Our next meeting is December 20th at 10:30.
I think Board Member Solache had its hand raised.
Oh, I didn't see that. Salachi, you're still with us. I thought you'd be in Sacramento. Go ahead.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Council member,
You're muted. Or
Assembly member, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to you and the entire committee members, of course, all the amazing staff in this committee. This will be my last committee meeting as stationary. I want to thank the chairwoman for appointing me to this committee. I think it's a very important committee, and I'm happy that I learned a lot. I'll make some more goodbye remarks at the next governing board meeting. So I just wanted to, on this committee, say thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much. We've glad to have you on the committee and on the board. We expect great things from you in Sacramento. Just don't drink all the Kool-Aid.
Thank you. Again, I'll make some more formal remarks at the December 6th board meeting, which will be my last board meeting as well.
Remember where you came from.
Thank you, Larry.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everyone.
Very good. Well, we'll adjourn, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the board meeting.
Have a nice weekend, everybody.
All right, you too.
Thank you.